busted. He's something like a gym instructor or a trainer or something, typically. He's got a boyfriend that takes care of him. And what they do is they snatch the child. They give the child to the gay couple. And the sister winds up paying child support. And if anybody squawks about it, they scream alienation. Everything that's a cover for the overt racism and bigotry becomes labeled as alienation. So just be aware of the fact, and I mention that because it's a particularly egregious situation in Cobb County, Georgia. That's also the county where Stone Mountain is located. And
Judge, repeat that. Judge, repeat that if you can, because you went in and out. Judge Joe, if you could repeat that, because you went dead silent for a moment. If you could repeat that statement you were making about alienation. Thanks.
Okay. See, anything in the law is a two-edged sword. It can be used both ways. Now, alienation is an important concept for fathers who have typically been excluded from proper consideration. I also mentioned that black men are the demographic that pays their child support most regularly in America. But a lot of people, including Barry Obama, claimed otherwise. But anyway, that's not the case. We pay it best. But when they withhold, that is part of a process that started in the early 80s as a national convention to make sure the child support was paid. So it's either an attachment to get your attention if you are allegedly in arrears, or you just aren't getting it if you in fact are. Now, Cobb County, Georgia, which intrudes into metropolitan Atlanta, is a classic case of the other side of the two-edged sword being used. What happens there is a group of gay men who run scams on particularly black women. The black woman may be a professional with six figures. Her biological clock is ticking. So the guy, he's white typically, maybe not. And he's typically something like a gym trainer or something like that. He tells her he's had a vasectomy. He wants to get married. She gets pregnant. And the first thing that happens when the child is delivered is the father files for custody and child support. It turns out he has no money, but he's being financed by his gay lover. And in Cobb County, they've got a racket in the child support, child custody courts. And they've got guardian ad litems and people that are appointed to represent folk, and they wind up billing the woman or the guy for more than that person's lawyer is charging them. And invariably, the worst-case scenario happens, and the gay couple gets the child, and the straight woman winds up paying them child support, $2,500, $3,000 a month. And it was all a scam, and what they used to cover the outright racism or sexism that's involved in Cobb County, Georgia, with claiming alienation if anybody squawks about it. So, see, whenever you want something done in law, be aware that the sword can swing the other way. So it is a problem. One of the things that most impacts black people is we've always been the guinea pig for society. 50-some years ago when I was an undergrad at UCLA, I heard this group preach long and loudly, and also on other campuses, about they were going to take over media, politics, and the entertainment industries, and they would control what got heard, what got shown as entertainment, and what the results were going to be politically. And they've done that. And black men were looked at as the worst of the bunch of men. Masculinity in general was supposed to be toxic, and black men more so than any other group. So they wanted to make an example of black men and destroy them. They were going to destroy the black families, not so much because it was initially targeted at blacks, but because a lot of the lesbian/feminist supporters back 50-some years ago decreed that being married was a form of outright slavery for women, so they were going to destroy the institution. So us, again, being the guinea pigs for society, we have seen families in black communities destroyed. We have a horrible problem in our communities where there are no traditional families. Courtesies, work habits, outlooks on life, they're determined by traditional families. And when you don't have traditional families, the children become adults who do not have an appropriate outlook or worldview. And that's what we see reflected. I would just limit my initial comments to that. Hello?
Oh, I totally agree with you, Judge. It's good being on the phone with you. I always admired you from afar, from on TV. Haven't seen much of you on TV. I do see you in commercials in the St. Louis area for, is it Brown and Crouppen?
That's right. And by the way, I'll give it this. I edit I'm discriminatory about who I'll do ads for. They impressed me because you've got a little suburban area outside of St. Louis that was the scene of an uproar. And it seems like nobody could find a black lawyer to do stuff, so they set up an office to do pro bono. And I thought that was a good thing to do. And too many young black lawyers these days are turning the profession into a business, and it's all supposed to be about making money, and nobody gives back, and they forget that some of the civil rights that they think are passé issues impact them too. Right here in the Memphis-Shelby County area, there was an attack on the voting machines. The feds came in 2008, put the money up to replace every one of them. They said they were too corrupted to have a fair election. So this black guy, good brother, was running for sheriff. The local trial court ruled in his favor that the machines were corrupted and opened up for a new election. The election commission appealed the result, and all the black lawyers wanted him to give them an $80,000 retainer to take the case. And I'm chastising them like, fool, don't you vote here too? Why are you charging this man something that he can't come up with? You ought to be doing it pro bono. Well, Judge, it's just about money. It's not like in your day. Well, it is. But see, that was a few years ago before the recent revelations have gotten in place. See, it's dangerous out there. America is what it is, and as long as black folks serve this function for the country, which is we are its scapegoats, even if nominally only vicarious scapegoats. So when things get tense and people have a lot of frustration and aggression to relieve, they can displace it on black people. And the rest of the country, excluding us, can be more cohesive.
Yeah. There's a big problem here in the East St. Louis, St. Clair County area. And now that I'm off the bench, I have much more of a voice to speak on a lot of the injustice and inequities that are happening here. We are 99% African-American city with about 26,000 residents, and all black people pretty much vote Democrat. So everybody outside of East St. Louis, the non-black community, they're either Democrat or Republicans, but the Democrats can always count on that 26,000 or so votes to get them over the top to run the county, but yet we have no hospitals for our residents, no businesses, no solid economic base. The school districts are being underserved, and it's just it's like you're stuck. You go off to school, you come back, you want to make change, and then if you voice out, then the fix is in for you. So a lot of people are kind of muffled and don't want to speak on the glaring disparities in the communities, the glaring disparities in the funding, and it's just a shame, and it's wasted talent that we have here, and I wish that things could be different, but I can't do it alone. So, you just have to sit back and hope that that things change. But I'm constantly on a mission to raise awareness and get people woke about the injustices and the inequality that's going on in the Metro East St. Louis area. So I do appreciate this platform to share with you and to talk about fathers' rights, to talk about civil rights issues and the like. So it's all good.
Yeah. By the way, that's Ferguson I was talking about. It just came to me. But you know what? You're right, Judge. Part of this whole problem is that over the last 50 years, we have been taught to glorify dysfunction. That's part of what I heard them talk about in Hollywood, with the distinct purpose of saying, if we take these black folk and we show them entertainments that make what they are all right, we don't have to worry about them being aspirational, and they will flock. And they used to say something interesting. It's just like, can you imagine a preacher, how big his congregation would be if he told his congregationers it was okay to commit sin so long as they believed? And by the way, I've heard a lot of that in black churches over the last 30-some years, but that's what it is. See, we are into dysfunction, and we have an educational system that is no longer what it used to be, where people are not taught to critically analyze and think about certain things.
We have a dysfunctional educational system.
Yes, and it's for white. See, it started off in the white side of things when the religious right got too much control, and they didn't want anybody to interfere with beliefs, you see. So they started this insane nonsense of dumbing down education. Like with this COVID-19 thing, I find it very disturbing because a lot of answers to what's going on, or a lot of questions that are being asked now, wouldn't be asked if they had the 5th grade education I got back in the 1950s about biology. They certainly wouldn't be asked if they got what I got in the 11th grade in the early 60s. But it's like, what are you going to school for? People get all these degrees, but they don't have common sense. Judge, one old lawyer at a joint bench and bar conference I was at said, God damn, we go and pick the law students at the top of their class, pay them good money, and they come in and they can research stuff, but they can't get it. And I told one of them, I said, damn, son, any fool can go look up a case. You in it because you're supposed to exercise common sense. What the hell's wrong with you? Don't you have any?
Yeah.
But you see, that's the way it goes.
And I would say if this was a street situation, and we understand what goes on in the street, if somebody was gypping us or taking advantage of us or getting things from us and we're not getting anything in return, it would be a problem.
It'd be a whole nother ball game.
It'd be a whole nother ball game. And so, but that's not how we look. We're so restrained and constrained in our thinking.